we see this all the time with clients, right? Though, where they're feeling stuck, they're feeling down, and they're stuck in their head
Yep.
and they can't get into action. And this doesn't mean you have to be in action all the time, but when you're perseverating and you're not making any forward motion, sometimes people can really be in that place for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's just kind of an inertia. But then something happens, something shifts, whether through counseling, their own inner work, a combination of the two. And all of a sudden, that same person, nothing's changed in their life, but they have a completely different mental outlook and they meet the world in a different way every day.
Hi, Colette. Welcome back to another episode of Insights from the Couch. How you doing today?
I'm excited for this conversation. I think it's so important. We're going to be talking to you all today about the symptoms of mental wellness.
I mean, we hear all the time that there's a mental health crisis in our country. Everybody hears that. Oh, there's mental health crisis. Anxiety's up, depression's up, complex trauma, everybody has it.
Suicidality.
Yeah, addiction, everything. So I think that people have this notion that if they aren't deep in suffering, they are fine.
Right. Or if there isn't a diagnosable pathological problem, they're fine.
And there's no need to that's what people are like, I don't need therapy. Like, why would you even do in therapy? That's not for me. But I think what we're trying to say today is that mental health kind of exists on a continuum. And a lot of these things we're going to talk about today are not the default settings for most people. Like even us. I'm going to be really upfront about that.
Speak for yourself, Laura.
You came fully baked, Colette, but I did not.
I'm kidding.
So I'm on the continuum as well. And these are things to be worked for and to be nurtured. And some of them are going to be harder for you than others. So
yes. And the point of these, we're going to give you 4 signifiers to think about today in terms of mental wellness. The point isn't just to have some gold star that says, I don't need therapy. Look at me, I'm doing great. The point is that this is how you live the most fully enriched, holistically happy, physically and emotionally well quality life possible.
yes. And these are things to look for in other people. If you're out there and you're dating or you're building friendships, these are things that you can begin to look for as signifiers, markers of wow, this person's safe. This person's good.
Yeah. If only I had known about these when I was single. I had a long stretch between my divorce and remarriage, and I pretty much didn't choose people initially who had almost any of these, I think.
These aren't sexy. The things we're talking about today are not particularly sexy.
No, but they're rewarding. All right, so let's dive into it. The first, and I'll let you start, Laura, is psychological flexibility. This is hugely important.
And for me, it's the goal of therapy. For so many people, psychological flexibility is this outcome that is just where you're wanting to head. And it's a principle that's at the center of what they call acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT therapy. And it's the idea that you're always moving between acceptance of what is, which can be really tough, right? What is can be really hard. And a commitment to what can be and what choices you actually have. And you're flowing between these two things, not really getting overly stuck in either. Which is some people who are mired down in pain, these people. They want to tell you the story of their divorce. They want to tell you the story of how they lost the job. They want to tell the story and they want to tell the story and they're just stuck in pain and victim.
Yeah.
And that's a real place. And then there are other people that are just, they call them fire fleers. Martha Beck always calls them fire fleers. That they're just wanting to get to the next thing. They want to create a list, a plan. They never acknowledge pain. They never sit with pain. And they're moving on.
Yep.
They're both really important. You got to acknowledge pain. You got to accept what is. What did we call that one time? empowered acceptance. Wasn't that the word we came up
Mhm.
with?
Yep.
Like, it's the idea that, like, yeah, stuff has happened, but I'm
It's hard.
empowered around yeah, this isn't easy. And now I'm looking at what are the choices that I have, and you're moving between these 2 shores, and that's
Exactly.
psychological flexibility.
And I think that's a huge thing to keep in mind when people are thinking about approaching the empty nest phase, dealing with a divorce, being sick, having cancer,
Yeah, yeah.
potentially retiring, right? I mean, these are things that are incredibly challenging, will draw on every last drop of our resources. And
Mhm.
even in the midst of the pain, we do the best when we acknowledge it and allow it to be there. And we're able to toggle back and forth between somehow coming to accept life on life's terms and also still being in some kind
Mhm.
of healthy forward motion.
Love it.
And also, before we move on to the next one, it's this idea of that you've talked about a lot, Laura, where two things can be true at the same time. Right? Being able
Yeah.
to hold things, they're not absolutes. My husband is pissing me off right now and I want to kill him, not literally, and I love him dearly.
Yes.
Right? I'm exhausted and I've had enough of whatever I'm doing and I just want to be done and I love my job or right? It's
Yes.
not these absolutes. There are in fact many things true at the same time.
And I mean, I think what you're talking about is, like, thinking dialectically. Yeah, and I mean, we don't need to get deep in the weeds of all these, like, theories of psychology, but, like, DBT is dialectical behavior
Yep.
therapy, and it's all for helping people hold 2 complicated truths at the same time. That people are both good and bad. Because when you get into a bad space mentally, tunnel vision is one of those things that can
Right.
really creep up enough hardening around your opinions or your thoughts about yourself or other people, where it's like,
Absolutely.
I'm a piece of shit. Another person is a piece of shit. And you begin to lose all nuance or ability to hold any variety of experience in your head.
Yeah.
So, mentally healthy people can see around an issue. And I can hear the criticism of like, no, well, you need to be able to make choices and definitive choices and have solid opinions on things. Maybe, yeah, sometimes you do. But you have to also be able to really look at multiple perspectives and multiple aspects of an issue.
Yeah, and I would say that those things are not mutually exclusive,
Yeah.
but rather feed each other. You need to be able to act, you need to have opinions, you need to be decisive, and you need to be holding all of these truths with awareness at the same time so you can make the choices that honor yourself most deeply.
And then let's just be honest, there's certain people, their brains just do not tend to work that way. So this is an idea that they have to constantly be working on.
Yeah. Some people are very black and white.
Yeah.
You do one thing, one transgression, and that's it. You're dead to me.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of seeing, like you said, people aren't all good or all bad. I mean, there are probably a few exceptions, but for the most part, people are fundamentally good, doing the best they can, and they can do hurtful, harmful things at the
Yeah.
same time. So the more we can hold the nuance and be flexible with what life throws us, the more resilience, the more we
Yes.
feel at peace and content with our life. All right, so let's get into number 2, which is one of my personal favorites, having a full range of feelings and allowing the full spectrum of feelings to occur. They're like waves that come and go. They do not have to control you, but there's research that shows, it's neuroscientist, I think it's Jill Bolt. I'd have to look that up to be certain, but who talked about how emotions naturally, they're neural impulses that naturally expire in about 90 seconds in the
It's
body
wild.
if we don't think our way into perpetuating them. Feelings and thoughts are kind of this like you think and then you feel, and then your feelings fuel your thoughts and so on and so forth. But it's really important to feel our feelings. And it's a huge part of psychological wellness.
And I mean, if you are curious about this, like go print a feeling wheel out. Like, I mean, some of these feeling wheels have like really, really intricate feelings. Have you seen one? I mean, I have
Oh, yeah.
one right now that's pretty cool. And it's like, can you allow yourself to be with all families of feelings? And interestingly, on the feeling wheels, most of the feelings are negative. Like most families of the like, I think joy is a big chunk. Maybe like a third of the feelings, less than a third of the feelings are joy based. And then a lot of them are sadness, anger, surprise, which
Mhm,
a lot
mhm.
of times can turn
Disgust,
disgust.
sadness, shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Envy.
depends whose research you look at. There's everything. Experts actually don't have a consensus on how many emotions there are. There's anywhere from 3 or 4 primary to the infinity of the feelings wheel.
Yeah.
But I think what you're onto here is not only is it important to allow some of the feelings that might be in the more painful families to occur, but that there's a lot of value in being able to identify those feelings and name them, that's actually regulating and organizing and essential to your well-being.
And you know what else? I think another thing that people don't realize is that if you cannot sit with the negatives, it becomes very hard to get to joy.
Yep.
Like sometimes very often, the path is acknowledging our sadness, our anger. If you begin to hold that stuff off, you're blunting joy as well.
Yeah, that's been proven.
Yeah.
That you can't if you block the negative emotions, you're blocking the positive ones as well.
Yeah. I know Brene Brown talks about that a lot, as do others. I think there's like a whole thing on the feeling diamond,
Right.
and
Right.
how you have to process through a feeling and you have to feel it. You can't run the feeling. You have to feel the feeling.
And you can't distract yourself, numb yourself, deny, suppress, repress. Those things lead to illness. So, just to be clear in terms of what this looks like in a day to day life, this doesn't mean that you swim in your feelings or that
No.
they overwhelm or drag you down or that you're walking down the street telling everyone how sad and enraged you are every 5 minutes. It just means being more connected to yourself and noticing that an emotion is happening and not running away from it or pushing it down like a bouncing ball anytime you feel something that's less than ecstatic.
And extending yourself some self-compassion around those feelings. And I think one of the things really strongly cognitive thinking people want to do is they want to argue with these feelings and they want to know why they're having these feelings. And that's not helpful very often. Sometimes it's just helpful to be with feelings and mindfully kind of watch them float through and
Right.
watch them change because they change so rapidly.
Right, and I think that's absolutely right that the feelings are not going to respond to being argued with or nor do they respond to, "Oh, I gotta figure out why I feel anxious," or "Today I'm kind of down. I gotta figure out why so I can do something." Sometimes you just have to say, "Today I just feel kinda off. I'm
Yeah.
sad." I don't know what happened. I don't have to do anything profound to fix it. And I think this is a quality of mental wellness that people who really have worked on themselves, they do this.
Yeah, and a lot of people do not come out of their childhoods equipped to do this. So this is not a default setting a lot of people have. A lot of people feel a messy feeling and they feel really compelled to clean it up. So, but yeah, you're right. This is a
But
mental
this is
wellness
right.
thing
And this is also something that even if you don't come out of childhood prime to do, that can be, it's just a matter of a conscious effort.
and
And
practice.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it becomes a habit. Okay, so number 3 is that mentally well people, truly mentally well people, really know themselves. They don't self-abandon. They give themselves permission to be who they are unapologetically and tend to and take care of themselves. And you had the 3 little things that people need to be able to say that I love, so I'll let you take that part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I had this other thought too. I was going to say along the lines of this, of where you know yourself. I just listened to this whole thing that Dr. Becky did, Dr. Becky Good Inside,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
work.
yeah, of course.
And she was talking about how mentally healthy people believe themselves. so that when they're having an internal reaction to something, they really trust their own internal compass, as opposed to sitting around looking at everybody like, are you seeing this? Do you think this is messed up? They believe themselves. So I think that's really cool. But I know what you're getting at.
That's huge, but that's huge what you just said, Laura. That's
Yeah.
huge because in couples therapy, what I see is women often, and men too, but women often saying, "Oh, well, I don't know. I suppressed or denied my needs because I wasn't sure if I should have them, or, I didn't really know if I had a right to feel that way, or maybe I'm
Yeah.
overreacting."
No, that's huge. That can't be understated. Let's underline that. Mentally
Right.
healthy people believe themselves. They believe their own experiences.
Right.
The other piece that you are getting at is like the ability to say these three simple things.
Which I love.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And expressing gratitude freely and openly and warmly. Second one, I am so sorry. I hurt you and I can repair that. I can stand in that and I can admit when I am wrong. And finally, I need help.
Yeah.
I can't do it myself.
There's a lot of hyper independent women for whom that's surprisingly difficult, right?
Yeah. And I think we know some types of people that you will never hear a thank you or I'm sorry from.
What do you see as those types of people, Laura?
I mean, I hate the whole narcissistic bus, that our whole culture's on because that is our culture. We are just a highly narcissistic culture. But I think the more prideful and the more
Yeah.
narcissistic, and I think this tends to be men, but I think there's a lot of men that can fall into that bucket, but women too, where it's just very hard to be vulnerable and to like say thank you and acknowledge other
Mm.
people or to say, and the sorry is even harder, right? And it's like, I did something wrong. They just do not want to get close to any kind of shame.
I'll tell you, I think this is so critically important. And I think the saying sorry is something that I know I struggled with when I was younger because I would feel shame. I would either feel like I was apologizing for something that I didn't feel like was fair, right? A little defiant part, or I would feel so badly about what I did that to actually sit in it, the pocket of it, and own it just felt a little bit intolerable. But just before I left to record this podcast, I had been really being very short and grouchy with my husband. And I got curious about it, as I typically do with my own process. Why am I acting like this?
Mhm.
And I discovered that it had nothing to do with my husband. It was really just my own stress and busyness, and there was no good reason for how I was being, and it wasn't anything that bad. I was just like, "What? No, I don't know. I don't know where it is." Like, that kind of just a little bit of a short tone, nothing egregious. But I made a point before I walked out to go up to him and say, "Hey, I know I've been short with you this afternoon. I'm really sorry. It's not nice, and I'm just grouchy. I hope you can give me a little bit of grace." And he jokingly said, because he's been reading my book as I'm working on it,
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, well, that was a good repair, Colette." He was like, "I could teach you a thing or two about that, but you did a good repair," because he had learned about that in my book. And, that's really important. I could feel a part of me, just to be honest, I could feel a part of me recognizing that I had been short and wanting to just brush it off. Like, I didn't wanna go and have to be like, "Sorry, I wasn't being very nice."
Yeah.
Just some like more egoic part, didn't feel like doing that. But for the good of the relationship and because I would want that same thing, I took the time to look him in the eye and say, "I'm sorry." And it wasn't a huge thing, but those things mean a lot.
They really do. They mean a lot with your kids too. And I think, people don't get this right in real time all the time. But like you said, if you take a minute to reflect or some time to reflect, circling back around and saying like, "Hey, that thing I said or that, I wasn't nice to you. I'm so sorry. It wasn't right. It's not okay."
Right. And
Yeah.
just taking genuine accountability, not a hasty, huffy sorry,
Yeah, like,
but a
"Sorry you
real,
felt that way."
yeah, never say that,
Never
please.
ever say that.
Right, it's the most invalidating thing that I
Yeah.
think someone can hear, but a true apology and a true expression of gratitude, and asking for help when you need it, those are signs of mental wellness and, frankly, emotional maturity, which are like, siblings.
They're siblings, and I'm not always great at accepting help. Just I mean, I think like you said, a lot of women aren't. I don't I don't love to have to be, helped or just even to be super grateful to other people. It's like, "Ugh, like, I got it, like, leave me I didn't ask for that." And
Yes.
I have to really, like, center myself around that.
Me too. I think I've gotten better at it at this stage of life and probably in large part from becoming a therapist,
Yeah.
frankly. But I used to always feel if someone was doing something for me that I would owe them something back. I didn't want to owe anyone anything. And,
Yep.
I have a strong hyper independent part. I think that's very typical of our generation too,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's really valued if you don't need a lot of help, right? You're strong.
I have something around gift giving too. This may be just unique to me, like gifts can sometimes have always felt like a little manipulative to me, and I have like a thing around that I've had to work through.
Interesting.
Again, like things being used as like a way to like I don't know, gain entree. Like that was a big thing in my childhood. I did not love gifts. Gifts took on an icky feeling. So even to this day getting gifts, I feel some sort of way about.
See, I automatically feel like if I get a gift, oh, well, now I better make sure I give you a
Yes.
gift and it better be good. And I'm not that good at
It better be
gifts.
good. There's a
Yeah.
perfectionistic part too that's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I gotta do it right. I don't wanna do it at all."
Yes. I don't like gifts either. And they're not terribly important to me.
No.
I'd rather just have an experience or time with someone
Yeah.
but if someone gives me a nice gift, then I'm always like, "Oh shit, now
Yeah.
the the expectation is high."
That's
But
what
I
I love
guess
that about us. We just, like, we'll go out and, like, have a nice meal, and we don't need any of that. I love that.
yeah, in fact, we're due for one of those soon.
Yes. We'll schedule that.
Alright, so let's
Alright.
talk about the 4th and final thing.
And there's probably so many more. Like, if we sat down for, like, another hour, I could think of, like, 10 more, but these are some core ones.
Yeah, of course, there's more to mental wellness, but these are core signifiers, again, that indicate emotional maturity, mental wellness, and will help you enhance the way you experience your life. So
Yeah.
the 4th is flowing into the world open to experiences, being curious, being engaged.
These are, like, the big things that Carl Rogers talked about in, like, On Becoming a Person and some of his, like, core works. But he'd always say that when people got above baseline, this is what we're trying to do in counseling. You're assuming people are coming below baseline. Like, they've got symptoms, they're depressed, they're anxious, they don't feel
Or
great
they're going
about
through a hard
themselves.
time.
They're going through a
Yeah.
hard time. Something's really, like, pushing on their functioning. And when they start to come above baseline, the symptoms of that is they are curious about the world. They have what we call forward motion. They start actually acting. They start doing things. They start
Yeah.
trying things. And
Yep.
they have an openness to experience, an openness to people and the things around them. And that is the
Yes.
coolest thing to see, and feel in your own body when you're like, yeah, I want to try this. I'm
And
open to this.
and can't you look, not just with our clients, we see this all the time with clients, right, though, where they're feeling stuck, they're feeling down, and they're stuck in their head,
Yep.
and they can't get into action, and this doesn't mean you have to be in action all the time, but when you're perseverating and you're not making any forward motion, sometimes people can really be in that place for a long time,
Yeah.
and there's just kind of an inertia. But then something happens, something shifts, whether through counseling, their own inner work, a combination of the two. And all of a sudden, that same person, nothing's changed in their life, but they have a completely different mental outlook and they meet the world in a different way every day.
It's the best.
Have you ever been in a phase like that?
Where I'm stuck and
Yeah.
perseverating? Of course. Of course. Oh my god, so many times. I have a tendency towards growth, like, I'm fascinated by it, I wanna be there, but there have been times, especially I think in my early 20s, like, I could not figure out what I wanted to do. I think I had way too many choices. That's one thing, we talked about this in the purpose episode, is, like, a little bit of deprivation, a little bit of, pain will clarify choices, and I remember really being ruminative after college and between grad school and being like, "Well, I could do this and I could do that, but I'm not sh" and, like, looking for a perfect fit and just grinding my gears. I think I wore my mom
Mm,
out a lot in that phase of my life
yeah.
before I finally made a decision.
Yeah.
And other phases of my life. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not it's not limited to that phase.
No, and I think for listeners, at this stage of life in midlife, this can come up a lot because we many of us, not everyone has children, but for those who do, and you and I both do, we can be so focused on children for so long that then when they gain independence, either in high school and they're just not around as much, or when they go off to college or whatever else they do, they leave the home. There's this big void that needs to be filled for a lot of us. It's definitely an adjustment. And I think sometimes people can really get stuck in terms of where am I going to put my energy? What's next? I also think a lot of people can be in this place that's the opposite of being open and curious when they've been struggling with whether or not to end a relationship for a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of women, one of the most common times to get divorced is at the empty nest stage because many times these relationships have been kid centric for so many years.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy at this phase of life to get into your own little pigeonhole and get stuck. So, a reminder to be open, I don't think everyone's always feeling this way. I know I've been in stuck phases. And when I'm in a place where I'm open and I'm flowing, it's like a whole different energy and things happen. So what I wanna leave some of you all listening with is, even when you're not feeling it completely, you can still actively generate this type of perspective. You can remind yourself, "Hey, let me just get out there and try something and do something and be in the world."
Yeah, action, getting into action, it precedes everything. Like, put action before trying to feel something. People say, "Well, I'll do something when I feel differently."
Yeah.
Try action first.
Yeah, you can't wait for that. You just
Yeah.
cannot wait for that. And I would also say, talk to a stranger. You don't know who you'll meet, what they'll say. It doesn't have to be profound, but just what some little interaction might leave you with. I will tell you just really quickly, the other day I went to get Botox and I was feeling really badly about myself in this sense because my Botox is not really working the way it used. Oh, am I frozen?
Mhm.
Oh,
You're
no.
okay now.
Okay, good. Well, that's funny I was talking about Botox as my face was frozen into a really bad Botox mask. But I've just been feeling like at this stage, I'm getting so wrinkly that it, like, doesn't work. Either my forehead falls or it's, like, parts wrinkled and parts flat. So I just wasn't feeling great about myself going in, and then I saw myself in the mirror in the dermatology office, and the lights are so bright, and I had all these sunspots, and I was just like, "Jesus, this is not looking good." And as I walked out, I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. I was checking out and I was chit-chatting with the lady who was running my credit card. And when I turned around, this woman said to me, "I don't know you, but I was just listening to you talk to that girl, and you just have such a lovely personality, and I just wish I knew you." I mean, I could like cry thinking
I
about it. And
love that.
I know. And it makes me get tears again. It changed my whole perspective. Here I was so focused on my sunspots and my wrinkly forehead, which don't even matter. And this lady made me feel so seen
Mm.
and valued, a total stranger, and it made my day.
It's so cool you said that because, another thing to say is like that woman seems like she has some mental wellness
Totally. She didn't have to
because
say that to
they
me.
didn't have to say that. If you think something of somebody and you have a compliment, give it.
Say it.
I got my eyebrows waxed. So similar story. And this woman who was like doing it was so professional. Like I've had really unprofessional ones. I go to like a chain to do it.
Yeah, like European wax.
Yeah. It was exactly that blade.
Yeah.
And like it can be so slipshod, right? Like where it's like, oh
Totally.
my God, where do they find people? This woman had her like script down. And I was like thinking to myself, she's good. She could probably sell sand on a beach.
Yeah.
And like, say it.
Tell her that.
Tell her that.
Yeah. You know what? You're really good at your job and you
Yes.
created a great experience for me today. And I just wanted to let you know.
That could take her confidence.
It
And
does.
you know what? I didn't say it. And I kind of like, I really judged myself leaving. I was like, you didn't say it.
Why
But
didn't you say it?
I don't know. I think I was like, there was a part of me was like, could this be awkward? I want to leave. But I knew when I got in the car, I was like, I should have told her that.
Okay.
And
Well, next time.
And
Next
everybody
time.
listening, the next time you notice something amazing about somebody, go ahead and say it.
Yeah. Take a second to, or just ask somebody a question. I mean, little things can shift us in big ways.
So true.
Join us next time. And thank you again for listening to Insights from the Couch.
See you next time.